Alright, so because I'm doing this myself, I'm having a hard time. So, getting ready to lift this off. Like I say, there's some pellets in there. I haven't cut that safety screen out yet. So, let's try lifting this off. There's a hook that it rests on. Excellent. Alright, so let me set this down. Box. I got a box under it, so alright, so I got that box under it to hold that up. This gasket looks good. Just that with the vacuum. So before I pull that, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna pop the grommet out. And yeah, I'm terrible at doing this. So I'm gonna look at the wiring where it went through the grommet, see if there's any bears showing, because that could be a short or some kind. I don't see anything. Everything looks good. So now I'm going to take the shear pin out. Before I take it out, some people were, including my daughter, were saying how this likes to rock one side to the other. And looking at it, it sits on this plate. So basically it's almost sitting flat, so when the torque comes in, basically that plate stops it. And some people reported in the group the rubber or Teflon bushing in there that's for the auger, when they were done, it was sticking out. Well, there should be a groove or a hole or something in it that this screw sets in. So if there was nothing in it, that auger would just be flopping around in there, and it probably would jam all the time and tear up the tube. So I haven't seen anybody say what size the nut and stuff was. So we're gonna find out. I'm gonna try to spin this to and get that nut a little more horizontal. I don't know if it's working or not. I guess it is. Alright, so we're gonna go through and find what size Allen and nut that is. The nut looks like it's close to a 5/16. We'll find out. Let's check a 9/32 first. Can't really get it in there, so I'm going to use Perellino's pliers, because it is a lock nut, but it shouldn't be super tight. And we need to figure out what size that Allen is. So let me see here. Let's see, 3/32, maybe. No, too small. Knowing it's from China, it's probably a metric. So apparently it is a metric. Alright, so let's check a 3 mil. Well, 3 mil seemed too big. Maybe it's a 2.5. Alright, so it looks like it's a 2.5 millimeter. No, I was wrong. 2.5 is not it. So let me go back to the 3. It seemed like it fit, but yet it didn't. The 3 is too big. I'm gonna go back to the American. Try the 3/32. I think I already tried that and it was too big. No, it's the 3/32. Yep. 3/32 is it. I'm surprised it ain't metric. Wow, that is tight. It's almost as if it's stripped on there. Wow. So I'm going to take the bushing screw out in order to get more room on it. When taking something apart, if you have to and you can never remember where stuff goes, lay them out on a towel, floor, somewhere they won't get disturbed to where how you took them apart. I'm putting stuff on the magnet. Apparently this must be an aluminum screw because it's not sticking, so it must be aluminum. Alright, so now I can slide that out. See if I can get on that better. Find out. It kind of doesn't look like it give me any better situation. I still can't get nothing in there. It's that tight. It's, I guess, the 700 that they show online is apparently there's a little more room or something, but almost got to jam this in there. Yeah, boy, that's tight. So this is 11/32 that I got on there. I don't know if it's the exact size or not, just because it's wedged in between the nut and that bushing, but I got it broke loose. So I'll find out exactly what size it is. Alright, there we go. It's definitely not that size. Alright, so it appears that nut's an 8mm. Alright, so get this out. And it does appear there's, I don't know if you can see it's shiny. It's like they did lube this shear pin up. Must be a rust factor or something, I don't know. Alright, so we got that out. Now we can remove the motor. And I'm going to set it over here. Alright, so we remove the motor. I'm going to remove all parts first. So the next thing, I'm going to remove the probe. And if you notice, it's clean. It's not been in there very long, but at the same time, I wipe the top off before each cook. I do the same thing with the dome lid. A lot of people say ignore the dome lid, but initially all the numbers on the control board as far as temp goes, the dome lid and an analog oven thermometer all temped out the same. So I'm just going to lift up and remove that. Now when I replaced this before, I put the screws up. Initially from the factory, one was up, one was down, and it was somewhat hard to get to. But I found it easier to get at the nuts this way, so I think it was a 5/16. Nope, I'm wrong. It's probably metric. I just don't remember. Yeah, it must have been metric. So I loosen it with pliers, and I'll find the proper wrench right before I do this final. So you can basically break them loose. They don't have to be super tight. And before I start all this, I removed all the inside, vac the pot out and all that, because the pot's coming out next. So because we're working in here, we can just leave our nut screws lay here. So then all we're going to do is pull up and pull it out. Now when you get ready to put the new one back in, so you can see it's not really dirty because I always kept it clean. But when we go to put the new one in, run it out here, when this box gets put on, we have to be careful because it needs to run down here. The initial factory one actually was running underneath here, and I think that's a bad spot if it's going underneath anything like that. It should have been straight down. And the same with the igniter. It was actually twisted around the auger tube. So now we're going to remove this. I've already had this out once, so surprisingly enough, everything was easy. The picture of what's in the bottom and all this, it looks worse in the video than what it actually is. You're not going to scrape all that out because basically what happens is, like down here, dust gets in there, the grease sticks to it, and that's kind of what builds up your seal to help shield some of the dust. Most of it backs out. You can see that I've used this. I've put a lot of pellets through this thing. Even the tubes burnt and stuff from the wild temp swings and different issues having. In basically the beginning, I had a very hard prime button. You press it and it's hard enough to push, it hurts your finger. So I called Pit Boss, explained what was going on, and I don't think it matters with me changing that board. I think I would have had these issues anyways. I've had this about a month and a half or a month or something, and I've cooked on it virtually every day, or tried to, and I started having temps and issues and different things. It's just one of those deals. So back on this pot, I basically just pulled it out, and you give it a twist. You're going to give it a twist because you need to clear the probe in the tube. Initially, when I first changed this out, it was all wrapped around. It was wrapped around this, so I couldn't figure out why it didn't want to come out. So I figured it out. It's because it was all twisted. Alright, so I need to remove the rubber bushing, because if you can see, it's starting to want to pull inside, and I don't want to do that. I get this off with one hand. Alright, so you set the phone down, because basically what I'm going to do is wrap some thread around this. That way it makes it easier to pull the new one through. Well, I'm looking for, got a cat toy that's got a string on it, if I can find it, because it's like one of those gardening strings. Alright, I'm back. So, yeah, this is actually a cat toy that I My daughter tied a string onto a mouse. So basically I'm just going to loop it through, and being it's got a loop on the end of it, I could loop it around the Molex plug, but I have a feeling it's probably come off, so I'm just going to thread the mouse through the loop to make a knot, and I can always untie that knot once I get it through. Alright, so I'm gonna fish this through to get it started, because then it's a straight shot through the square tube, because there's, if you can see in there, see how the cable goes on that side, but yet it's fished through on this side, and you don't see it. The camera would focus better. It's almost as if they didn't do it. And you see all the burnt pellets inside. A little bit, but not that far in. So now we're going to fish it through, and as I pulled it through, it basically unwrapped from that. So now I'm going to undo the knot, get the old igniter out, alright, and here's the burn pot. So what we got to do is we got to take that screw off, and if you look, you see how far it's actually sticking in. When I put the new one in, we want it sticking in at least that far. It can go a little farther. You see how much. I don't know if there's a specific amount that hurts to come through or not. I don't think it would hurt anything. Alright, so I'm gonna fight this with one hand. Alright, so this should be loose enough, and pull the hot rod, the igniter hot rod. So and if you look, looks like the end of it's somewhat hollow. Looks like it was rusting, which is odd. So I'm gonna put that aside. And get the igniter new one out, and we're gonna get that put in. I'm having a hard time holding the camera. I'm sure I'm gonna get a lot of negative feedback about it. So here's the new igniter. Gosh damn it. So it looks like it was somewhat of a bad idea. One of the kittens decided to pull on the string. Luckily there's enough for me to get in there at. Helmet wanting to play. Alright, we got that back. Alright, so here's the new igniter. You can see somewhat. It's got that dome dish just like the other one had, but it's not all rusty or nothing. So I'm gonna tie it. I'm gonna fish it through first. And stick the end back in the package to protect it from the oils. And we're going to tie the end on. We're going to fish it through, and then I'm going to put it back in the so it looks like that was a good idea doing that, but as you can see, it jams itself. So I'm gonna have to get a pick. No, we use the Allen wrench to get it out. So, I wasn't expecting this to happen. Come on. All right, there we go. So anybody that's doing that, it's a good idea, but get a little screwdriver, small pick, because that could happen. All right, now we're going to put it back in the holder. There's no specific indentation or anything on it. If I was to push it in right here, this would stop because there's like a collar. Put it in there, it would stop, and that's how much is sticking out. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave it. It gets hot, the more contact with the wood, pellets, possibly heat more pellets at once, faster startup. So we're going with that. I know it should be sticking out a certain amount. Alright, so when I put it back in, I'm going to hold and pull, and being as I need to go to this side, that's I'm gonna loop it underneath, if you can see. I think it's blocking. This is a tough one. Alright, if I go over this way, then I am looping around the tube. That's why it was hard to get out at the beginning. So I'm gonna go under the tube, and when I go in and down and twist it in, then my wire is all on this side. Alright, so then I'm gonna lift up on the tube to align my screws and get it back in that pocket hole. Alright, let's put these set-offs back in, standoffs back in. Don't tighten them down. Let's get them started. It does take a little bit of effort because this does not line up exactly, because the hole isn't exactly perfect for the pot and the burn pot and the tube. Once I get them all in, then I'll tighten them. Looks like this last one is straight on. Apparently, even with the screw in there, it's going to wiggle, I guess, a little bit. I know the other one did. So we're going to get rid of that trash. And now we're going for the temp probe. So basically, I can get a better picture. I hate pictures, videos that you can only see part, and I'm sure I'm guilty of that right now. So basically, we're going to thread this through, get this part way all the way through, leave a little, and then we're going to go back through the other hole. That way, everything doesn't twist up on us. And we're gonna get it set. Before you pull all this real tight, this down here, tighten these down and then worry about how much slack is actually there. Alright, so now we're gonna get one started, get the other one started before we tighten them down. And there is room for this to slide. This is probably because it's universal amongst most of the pellet grills. Alright, so basically if this was on like that, you can kind of see if you want to try to center it. So it looks like if I push it all the way to the right, it centers it. So we're going with that. These doesn't have to be super tight, just somewhat hand snug.